Historians are exploring evidence suggesting early Americans included Black Indians, native peoples with African ancestry, a narrative often erased or sidelined in traditional historical accounts. So you're going to have your $5 Indians, you're going to have your Mongoloid, red-colored Native Americans stating that this is untrue, even though we have tangible evidence, we have tangible proof that Blacks were here in the Americas prior to Christopher Columbus, as well as the Mongoloid-looking type people. Not just pictures, okay, even though these pictures are actual, these are not AI created, okay, because I know a lot of people like to say that. But before, I just want to go down the line here. Black natives were here in the Americas first. And for my tethers out there, tethers, Africans were here first. Because again, Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, we will never say that thousands of years past that our ancestors, if you follow the generations, did not come from Africa. Here's the claim we're making when it comes to how a lot of so-called Black people came to America. History states that only anywhere between 400 and 500,000 Black people or enslaved Africans were brought to the Americas, not Central America, not South America, but to North America, to United States of America that we call here today. Roughly 400 to 500,000. Now, majority of enslaved Africans were taken to Brazil. They have the largest Black population outside of Africa, okay? Roughly 5 million enslaved Africans were brought to Brazil. Now, when they brought those 400 to 500,000 enslaved Africans to the Americas, they stated that dark-colored Black people were already here prior to, that we were already free in this land. And granted, do not forget, Africans were some of the first explorers. So, of course, my great, 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 great grandmother and grandfather are Africans from the continent of Africa. But because the Moors and other Black groups explored the world, my ancestry is here in America. Just as though you have someone from Ghana is Ghanaian. They don't say, well, I'm from Africa, but I'm Ghanaian. I'm from Jamaica, and I know that my roots stem back from Africa. The same with foundational Black America. We are Black Americans. We are native Black Americans. And we understand that 1,000 years past, that yes, our great, so on and so forth, ancestors came from Africa. We won't denounce that. We won't deny that. But just as well, Nigerians, Kenyans, Ugandans, they are a different group of people, a different ethnic group based upon culture and experience. The same with foundational Black Americans. So when I look at this and we really break this down, we're cutting through the lies we've been told in history, in books, and in classroom, because they said that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. They said that the first people of this land were Asiatic Mongoloid tribes. But family, the truth they buried under centuries of propaganda is that Africans, our great ancestors, were here first. Before Columbus, before the Pilgrims, before the English or the Spanish. Again, our great African ancestors touched these shores, not as slaves, not as cargo, but as navigators and merchants and the original people and scientists and researchers, so on and so forth. Our people have been here for thousands of years. And when they brought over those 400 to 500,000 enslaved Africans, in so-called the early 1500s, there was an ethno-genocide where we have mixed and mastered and intertwined to become foundational Black Americans. So we would never denounce our African ancestry. When I look at my DNA of Ancestry.com, yeah, I'm a bit of this and a bit of that, all from Africa. But I also have, I think 5% Native American. So when and again, Native Americans, again, the Mongoloid looking type people that are here, that are on reservations, that those white supremacists and the colonial powers that were here prior almost killed off entire tribes, and some tribes don't even exist anymore because of the genocide, we still cannot forget our roots, that we've been here for a very long time. That's why you see certain images. You see all these pyramids around America, and you see artifacts that look like Black people, wide nose, high cheekbones, full lips. Does that look like a Hispanic person to you? Does that look like a Spanish person? Does that look like I can keep going on and on and on. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. Ivan van Sertima, because he laid this out and they came before Columbus. Now, I do want to point this out to a lot of you. Now, they came before Columbus, the African presence in ancient America. And again, the author of this book is Ivan van Sertima. And I'm just going to read this very quickly here. Let me see if I can blow this up so you guys can read along as well. The secret route from Guyana, it says, and he, Columbus, wanted to find out what the Indians of Hispaniola had told him, that there had come to it from the south and southeast Negro people, who brought those spear points made of a metal, which they call Guyane, of which he had sent to the king and queen for a saying, which was found to have 32 parts, 18 of gold, 6 of silver, and 8 of copper. African Guyanes were alloys of gold containing copper for the sake of its odor, for it seems that the Negroes like to smell their wealth. The Guyanes brought home by Columbus were assayed in Spain and were found and contained the same ratio of alloy as those in African Guyana. Now, and of course, if you guys want to read this book for yourself, any scholars out there, anyone who actually wants to know the truth, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, I will give you this book for free. Just leave your email in the comments below. Leave your email in the comments below, and I will try to go through that as fast as I can to send this book out. Okay. Also, again, here's my library, ladies and gentlemen. Here's my library. And I will go, and I have thousands of books. Now, I'm just going to show you, if you see any book that you would like to read, okay, any book that you would like to read, you might have to pause this. These are all in PDF format. You will be amazed the amount of reading I used to do. I won't say like Cat Williams, I read 3,000 books in 1 year. No, this is over almost 30 years of reading, okay? I used to read a lot. Now you can ask my wife. I read a lot, watch a lot of TV. I'm not gonna lie to you. I still read a little, but again, you might see some books twice. See 48 Laws of Power. Okay. I have a lot of books in here. Again, I can just scroll through this. Sexuality and Slavery. I have that other book, but there's another book I do want to touch on. There is another book that I do want to touch on before I go too far. But just piggybacking or going back to what I was stating before about this book, They Came Before Columbus. In this book, he actually proved that African mariners crossed the Atlantic using currents that flow naturally from West Africa straight into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. Then archaeology evidence from African-like stoneheads in Mexico to cotton and tobacco found in Africa long before Columbus set sail that actually backs this up. Now, I want to touch on some video clips that this young man broke down, some other history that I believe that you guys should be aware of. Okay. So we're going to comb through this. I want you guys to listen in on this.
So a lot of people like to talk about the Plecker paperwork from Virginia in 1924, which is understandable. That's a good paperwork. But people don't talk about the laws that were passed in Virginia way before Plecker. And for people who's going to be like, oh, you're only talking about Virginia. Well, we're going to see if these laws only happened for Virginia. Now, this right here is the status at large, being a collection of all the laws of Virginia. From the first session of the legislature in the year 1619. From the year 1619, the same year they said they brought Africans here. Pay attention. This is volume 3 by William Waller Henning. All right. So these are laws that they passed at the same year that they said they brought African slaves to America. All right. and for clearing all manner of doubts which hereafter may happen to arise upon the construction of this act or any other act, who shall be accounted a mulatto, right? You see on the left right there, who should be deemed mulattoes, repealing in clause, right? Be it enacted and declared, and it is hereby enacted and declared that the child of an Indian and the child, grandchild, or great-grandchild of a Negro shall be deemed, accounted, held, and taken to be a mulatto. So what does that mean? They did.
Now, of course, documentation like this, people, again, I know, when you get into the information about a lot of these books, I wanted to point out and reference some of what this young man was talking about, because again, I don't want to lose context on this. Okay. Now, this right here is one of the books he was talking about. I just want to point out certain words. And this one phrase that I found, I thought was very, very interesting. It says that if an English woman being freed shall have a bastard child by any Negro or mulatto, meaning that they were already having sex. Okay, they were already having sex, because this English woman, meaning white woman, was having a child by any Negro or mulatto, meaning mixed bred. She paid the sum of 15 pounds sterling within 1 month after such bastard child should be born, to the church wardens of the parish, where she shall be delivered of such child, in default of such payment shall be taken into the possession of the said church wardens and disposed of for 5 years, and the said fine of 15 pounds or whatever the women shall be disposed of for should be paid 1/3 part to their majesty for and towards the support of the government and the contingent charges thereof, and 1/3 part of the use of the parish where the offense is committed. Now, and again, this is coming out the laws of Virginia, and I want to make sure you guys have the right reference, volume 3. I also have volume 1 through 3 and all these, but this is the volume that the young man is referencing, that we're talking about currently here. Okay, that is what this young man is actually referencing. Okay, to provide more context, that this is again before. Now, it is a timeline. It's from 1619, I believe, until like the early 1800s or the late 1700s. But the certain sections he's talking about, how could you already have mulattoes? And I'll let him break it down.
Two separate groups. It said Indian and Negro. So they separated groups and said they're changing them to mulatto, which is a black person. And it further enacted that all and every other act and acts and every clause and article herefore made for so much thereof as relates to declaring who shall not bear office in this country, and are hereby repealed and made void to all intents and purposes as if the same had never been made. This is reclassification. This is what you call paper genocide. And then I got to thinking to myself, I'm like, wait a minute. During colonial times, weren't most states considered Virginia during that time? And guess what? I was right. A lot of states were. Several states or parts of them were originally part of Virginia. These include Kentucky, West Virginia, and portions of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Additionally, during the colonial period, Virginia's claims extended over areas that later became parts of Western Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So all these states were Virginia first and under the jurisdiction of Virginia, which means what? All these states and parts of these states were reclassifying Indians as mulattoes, which are black people.
Again, as we really dive into this, and I'm not going to go on some sort of riff and thing like a Dane Calloway. This is just an introduction to this, ladies and gentlemen, so we can really drill down to the truth of all matters. Because when we look at these volumes of the laws of Virginia, when we look at this, And again, the ones I reference are the Laws of Virginia, volumes 1 through 3. They show how early colonial elites legally separated Africans from native peoples and poor whites. Why? Because there was a mixing. Africans and Seminoles and Florida resisted together. And granted, if you guys are not familiar with some of the stories, about the Black Seminoles, if you guys are not familiar with the Black Seminoles and some of the things that, that Blacks were here for a very long time prior to 1492, again, the evidence states for itself. And here's a book that you guys can actually reference, A People's History of Florida, 1513 to 1876, how Africans, Seminoles, women, and lower class whites shaped the sunshine state. Shaped the sunshine state. But this is how I think, by eradicating certain doctrine and books from history, how you basically erase a lot of contributions and claim to the land that was already, basically occupied by Black people, by Africans of, 1,000 years past. A People History of Florida highlights how Africans, another group of people, long before officially founded America. And you look at the Olmec heads in Mesoamerica, the Olmec heads that people always talk about, we're talking about broad features, unmistakably African. Look at the linguistic ties between the Mandinka words and the native dialects. Even the language is very similar. You look at the agriculture and evidence that Africans brought knowledge of crops like yams and techniques that reshaped the soil. You look at the African presence in early Americas by J.V. Harvester. That's at the Smithsonian. They may take that away. African and Native American, the language of race and the evolution of red Black peoples by Jack D. Forbes. Black Indians, a hidden heritage by William Loran Katz. All this information is out there. People say that they're scholars, but again, they would like to adhere to emotional trauma that Black people would not hear, that it was Mongolian, red type, Native Americans, and people who, again, paid $5 to be part of the Indian stroll so they can be $5 Indians. And a lot of them were Caucasoid sort of people. And I must point this out because I think a lot of times when I do these breakdowns, people act as if this is about hate. This is not about hate, ladies and gentlemen. It's about the truth. It's about, this isn't about rewriting history to erase others. This is about the truth. Foundational Black Americans, descendants of those first Africans here, are not outsiders to this land. So when people tell foundational Black Americans, go back to your country, I should go back to DC. Some people may go back to Georgia. Some people may go back to California. Some people may go back to the Carolinas. Where you want us to go? This is, again. Because if we're all going back to our country, that means America will be uninhabitable. Will nobody be here. The Europeans, the Caucasoid Europeans will go back to Europe. The Mongolian type will go back to Asia. The Negroid, they will go back to Africa. Okay. Before exploration and exploring. So again, I mean, when we look at this family, we shaped it. We shaped this land. We bled for it. And now ancestors set foot on it long before America was even an idea. Now, foundational Black Americans, we have promoted a year 1526 because we have actual proof of when some of the first slaves were here and reports there were Black people already here when those 100 slaves that Vasquez bought, who was a Spanish conquistador, when he brought 100 slaves here and they rebelled against him, they did an uprising, rebelled, and then they ran off into the woods, and they stated that they ran off into the woods with people who look like them. They didn't say they were red or a different color or they were shaped different. They said they looked like them. So the question becomes, why are we still treated like foreigners on our soil we help create, that we help defend, that we help enrich and made rich? Again, There's no historian, there's no accountant, there is no economist that will tell you otherwise. The reason why America is the richest country in the world, because it has had hundreds of years of free labor, that they didn't have to pay people for the work that was being done. So it catapulted American economics on a whole new level. Only recently in the past 10 years have China been catching up to us. So again, who benefits from tethering us to a false story that says we only arrived in chains? Tethers, because they love to lean to white supremacist ideologies, as well as white supremacists, say that we don't have a claim to the land. And other groups of people who just like to chime in. But nonetheless, my answer is real clear. They want us to be blind without power. They want us blind to our power. They want us stupid to their low IQ remarks. They want to call us unintelligent. And again, this is not to those non-tethers. This is not to people who don't align themselves with white supremacist ideology. And when I reference white supremacy and the ideology therein, I'm not talking about all white people. I'm not talking about all black people. I'm not talking about all Asian people or Hispanic people or any other group. I'm talking about people who lean towards white supremacy and white supremacy ideology. And that can come from any group, because you have some black people out here who really lean tough in a white supremacy space, let me tell you. But I'm here to rip I'm really here to rip the Band-Aid off the sore. I'm really to put a gunshot in the wound. Our great, great, great ancestors were here before 1492. Black natives were already here. So when I tell you guys this, Black Americans, we are not a footnote. And for the 1,000 millionth time, foundational Black Americans are the foundation of this land.